The recording has begun.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. It is 6 p.m. I call to order the Town of La Plata Planning Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call for quorum verification purposes?
Chair Banks,
Present.
Vice Chair Hudnall,
Present.
Councilman Gutenberg,
Here.
Commissioner Whale,
Here.
Commissioner Miller, absent, Commissioner Ford, Commissioner Ford,
Here.
thank you. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Gutenberg, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you, sir. For the purposes of ex parte disclosure, I will ask the commissioners and Councilman Gutenberg if off-the-record communications with applicants or developers or neighbors or other stakeholders regarding any of the projects before the commission or outside of the public hearing process has occurred. Councilman Gutenberg, what say you?
No.
Vice Chair Hudnall?
No.
Commissioner Will?
No.
Commissioner Ford?
No.
And neither have I. Next on the agenda is the public hearing for zoning text amendment ZTA 04-2026 accessory dwelling units. The applicant is the Town of La Plata. I will turn to Madam Clerk if you would review the purpose and procedures of public hearing.
The Town of La Plata public hearings are conducted in the following manner: call to order, review of public notices, review of sign-in sheets, introduction and presentation by staff applicant, Planning Commission questions or comments, public comment, applicant staff's rebuttal, Planning Commission discussion, applicant staff closing statement, conclusion of the hearing, decision to close or keep the record open, vote by Planning Commission. Written documents for the record submitted in advance of the public hearing are provided to the presiding officer prior to the opening of the public hearing. At the appropriate time, the presiding officer will call registered speakers to the podium. Speakers who have registered to speak in advance via the town webpage will be recognized prior to speakers who registered upon arrival at the public hearing. At the discretion of the presiding officer, speakers' comments may be limited to 3 minutes and may not be yielded to another person. A sign-in sheet was provided at the entry of council chambers for any public hearing attendees to register to speak if they have not already done so in advance via the town's webpage. Registration to speak will end when the public hearing is opened.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I officially call to order the public hearing on ZTA 04-2026 accessory dwelling units at 6:03 p.m. Madam Clerk, has the notice of public hearing been properly advertised?
Yes, Madam Chair, for the record, this public hearing was advertised in the Southern Maryland News issues published on July 17, 2026 and July 24, 2026. A copy of the certificate of publication on the advertisement itself is attached to the meeting agenda. Notice of this public hearing was also advertised on the town's webpage.
Madam Clerk, apart from the certificate of publication published in the agenda packet, are there any additional notice of public hearings for the record?
No, Madam Chair.
Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak this evening?
No, Madam Chair, there are no public speakers.
Thank you. Let me turn to the town, Director Dooley, and apologies, young man, for their presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Keener Johnson, the senior planner, who is responsible for the revisions to the accessory dwelling units.
And Mr. Johnson, I'm clear on your name now, so I will move forward appropriately.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the Planning Commission.
Tonight, I'll be presenting zoning text amendment 04-2026, which proposes revisions to the town's accessory dwelling unit or ADU regulations. The purpose of these amendments is to update the town's ordinance to comply with recent changes to Maryland state law while retaining local development standards where permitted. Zoning text amendment 04-2026 is a town-initiated amendment that applies townwide. The proposed ordinance amends section 191-53, subsection B, subsection 1 of the La Plata Municipal Code governing accessory dwelling units. The purpose of the amendment is to ensure the town's regulations are consistent with recent state legislation changes governing ADUs. During the 2025 legislative session, the Maryland General Assembly adopted House Bill 1466 and Senate Bill 891, which established new statewide requirements for accessory dwelling units. As a result, local jurisdictions are required to update their zoning ordinances by October 1st, 2026. The proposed amendments before you tonight are intended to satisfy those state requirements. The town attorney has reviewed the draft ordinance changes and determined that it is legally sufficient. This slide summarizes several of the major revisions included in the proposed ordinance. First, the ordinance confirms that ADUs are permitted in the town's residential zoning or districts, as well as on properties in other zoning districts containing a legally established single-family detached dwelling. Staff is proposing to remove the CBT zone from the list of permitted zoning districts because single-family detached dwellings are not permitted in that district. Since an ADU is an accessory to a principal single-family dwelling, allowing ADUs in the CBT zone would be inconsistent with the town's zoning code. The ordinance also removes the existing 5,000 square foot minimum lot size requirement as required by state law. Additionally, the amendment clarifies that an ADU must remain subordinate to the primary dwelling and may not exceed 75% of the primary dwelling legal floor area. Finally, the ordinance removes the owner occupancy requirement because Maryland law no longer permits local jurisdictions to require a property owner to live in either the primary dwelling or the ADU. First, the ordinance now expressly recognizes internal ADUs in addition to attached and detached units. Attached and detached ADUs are already permitted under the town's existing regulations. The addition of internal ADUs aligns with the ordinance with state law. Second, Maryland law no longer allows local jurisdictions to require off-street parking for ADUs. However, staff has proposed language to ensure that an ADU may not eliminate or reduce the minimum required parking for the existing primary dwelling. The ordinance also updates the development standards by requiring detached ADUs to comply with the same setback requirements applicable to accessory structures. Limiting the height of an ADU to the height of the primary dwelling, requiring compliance with applicable health and safety regulations, requiring complete living facilities, and clarifying that an ADU may not be sold separately from the primary dwelling. Finally, the amendment removes the owner occupancy requirement associated with the town's use and occupancy permit to remain consistent with state law. Although state law expands opportunities for accessory dwelling units, it does not require municipalities to allow them to operate as short-term rentals. Staff is proposing language that will prohibit ADUs from being used as short-term rentals because short-term rentals are not a permitted land use for primary dwelling units under the town zoning code. This amendment is intended to preserve ADUs as a source of long-term residential housing, which staff believes is consistent with the intent of the recent state legislation. In summary, the proposed ordinance updates the town's ADU regulations to comply with recent changes in Maryland law while preserving local development standards where permitted. Accordingly, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt the attached resolution recommending that the town council approve zoning text amendment 04-2026 as drafted. Madam Chair, this concludes staff's presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I have a few questions before I turn to my colleagues here. My first one is minor, and it's a formatting concern. If you look at page 2 of 10 of the modified, the strikeout document, deeds and restrictions section, I think should be number 8 as opposed to because development and requirements is now number 7 on page 1. And then short-term rental should be number 9. So that should be 8 and 9. Am I looking at that correctly?
You're looking at
Page 2 of 9,
correct. So that's,
deeds and restrictions should be 8,
you're looking under under section
1.
correct. Yes, that's correct. We'll fix that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then a couple of more substantive things. 1A under where relate 1AB, which was 1AB, is now 1A on page 1 of 9. It says relate to the design of the primary residence by use of similar exterior wall materials, window types, doors, window trims, roofing materials, and roof pitch. However, can you confirm for me that this is not out of line with the new Maryland ADU legislation that explicitly prohibits approval based on subjective criteria like neighborhood compatibility or design or aesthetics? Either, you don't have to give me an answer now, but can you, okay. Okay.
Thank you. Be happy to address it again before it goes to council.
Okay, that sounds good. And then my final thought is, as it relates to short-term rental, I'm a little concerned that perhaps we are being a little bit more restrictive and perhaps even overreaching beyond what the state law is saying. And it may be essentially silent on it for the most part. But I wonder if people couldn't challenge us on that. So, once again, I hear you say this has gone through the town's attorney. I just want to affirm or confirm that we're not overreaching or being more stringent than we should be as it relates to short-term rentals.
No, I think this aligns with our ordinance because our ordinance only allows for bed and breakfast types of uses in a residential zone or single family type zone. So short-term rentals are fundamentally prohibited, although we don't have a specific ordinance for short-term rentals. The tenor of the ordinance prohibits short-term rentals, but again, not bed and breakfast. So prohibiting a short-term rental for an accessory dwelling unit aligns with our current ordinance.
Okay. I do have one final thought. I was thinking while Mr. Johnson was talking, would this ordinance override any HOA governance restrictions?
And Mr. Dooley can't correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that the state law overrides any HOA or any covenants that are that have been enacted that prohibit ADUs on their property.
And by extension, because state law does, this ordinance would, because it's in compliance with the state law. Is that the
Yes.
thread we're pulling? Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Let me now turn to my colleagues. Commissioner Ford, any thoughts?
I have two thoughts. So, great, we're coming in compliance with the state, and the state's making progress towards ADUs. Two questions. So with the owner occupancy not required, that opens the door to investor-owned properties with ADUs. Is there a way to kind of measure what that trend looks like over time? I mean, we can't stop it, of course, but we should probably consider that. And then secondly, with the ongoing water and sewer discussions that we've been having, what is the capacity that we can, that the town of La Plata can handle with respect to our current constraints?
So to answer your first question, I can certainly ask the advise the town manager of your concern or question with regard to and the properties being used for investment purposes. It's the state again is forcing this, it's not a staff initiated thing. So it's really the state's kind of binding our hands. Ultimately, what it does is going to impact the state, the town as part of a statewide issue if that becomes a problem. But there's at this point really little we can do. I can certainly again advise the town manager of your concern, but there's really little we can do about it, even if we were to find horrific findings on it, which I'm not sure that there would be, but if there were, then we can only address it with the state at this point.
Yeah, I'm always just looking like 10 years down the line. Like
What I can tell you is that I as I sit here, I don't think it's a foreseeable issue because the staff has looked up the last time that an accessory dwelling unit was approved in the town, or at least was even applied for, and that was 8 years ago. So I don't think it's going to be a horrific problem in the future. Certainly nothing that staff can foresee.
prior to my tenure here, that conversation has come up in lots of HOA meetings, like she brought up. It's been something that people have been interested in, but the regulation by those HOAs and by the state constrain that. So
Yes.
with the constraints being removed, I imagine we will probably see a spike, and it just might be good to measure that.
It could certainly happen. It's certainly possible.
Yeah.
But it's at this, based on our past experience, it hasn't been an issue.
Okay.
But moving on, as far as the water and sewer goes, the water issuance of a permit for an ADU is not impacted by our APFO for water or sewer. And the reason being is that the primary dwelling unit is on the property is allowed one water tap on the property. And so an ADU does not have its own separate water tap, right? It requires its own separate water and sewer connections, but not its own water tap. So the utilities for the cost to maintain the ADU is actually the burden of the actual property owner. Now, the actual property owner may require somebody living in that ADU to pay their share, perhaps, but But we don't issue a separate water tap for an ADU. So the ADU is kind of like doing an addition to a house.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I'm more concerned with the usage of the ADU. You know, you have twice the amount of water usage, and we're looking at the 80% capacity and the deals that we're doing with Charles County, with Charles County government to bring more water in. That's more where I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I understand. But there's little we can do because this is a state issued edict
Yeah.
onto not only the Plata, but everyone else in Maryland.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Will.
I do not have any additional questions, recognizing that this is a state initiated activity that we're doing here. Just a quick point of clarification, when we talk about short-term rentals, is that Airbnb and that type of situation?
Short-term rentals are like
Yeah.
Airbnbs or any similar type of
Perfect.
rental arrangement.
Okay,
Verbo.
Just to pull that thread, I thought I heard Mr. Johnson put like a 24-hour, 48-hour clock on that short-term rental. Is that what you said? One day? Is that what you said?
For short-term rental?
Yeah, I thought that's what I heard him say.
No.
I could be wrong.
for the bed and breakfast, because you know how you can do a bed and breakfast.
Is
so I
that what he
think-
said?
Yeah, so I wonder.
The code allows for bed and breakfast,
Yeah.
but part of the definition of that requires that the property owner to actually live in the residence of where the bed and breakfast is occurring.
Thank you. Vice Chair Hudnall.
I do not. I'm with you, Director Dooley, that, you know, this is something that has to, you know, be adopted, you know, before these bills even make it to where they're even approved on the floor in either the House or the Senate. They go through a specific type of legislative attorney that looks at the details and the nuances of these things and picks apart some of the things that we were talking about with HOAs and things like that. So I'm pretty sure they've already thought about this. So I have no questions at this time.
I hope your confidence is
I-
well founded.
Well, I mean, I've done, you know, bills in other states. I've worked with
Yeah, I
Senate,
have
you know, and it's pretty extensive what they do. So.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
they're human. Councilman Gutenberg.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I recognize as well that this is a compliance action by us, and it is driven by a problem that they're trying to solve at the state level. We do have a shortage of housing in the state of Maryland, and that ultimately makes housing cost more. It also, you know, in specific categories of housing, it's particularly difficult and commonly termed the missing middle. And I've experienced this with my own family, with a young son that went off with a job after high school, and just, you know, the living arrangements that young people who are just starting out, and on the other end of the spectrum, in some cases, you know, older family members are, as they're downsizing, the options that are available to them are really challenging. And I also know firsthand that it didn't used to be this way, that it was illegal to build an accessory dwelling unit, and prior to World War II, it was much more common to build houses like that. And in fact, when I sought a house, when my wife and I started having kids in La Plata, we only looked at houses that had what are now called ADUs by code, but we call it a granny house, right? Like when I tell a family, please come visit, I really mean it. Like they can come stay in a little separate house, and it's great. I got to tell you, it is great having and what is an accessory dwelling unit. It's been very valuable to our family and the way we live, and I think it is good that just from that personal kind of view of it, I think it's really good. But here's why I think it's really good at the municipal level, and I think the most significant thing that was done in this state bill, in my opinion, is dealing with the rules within HOAs, such that it just takes away that barrier. That is a significant barrier. And the reason why I think it's good in La Plata for us to do this is because infill building is if there's going to be growth, infill building is the best kind of growth. It's healthy for our infrastructure in the following way. When you don't add additional pipes, when you don't add additional roads, you don't add additional cost to the infrastructure to deliver the water. And in thinking about water, I think it was important. I'm glad you asked the question about how the allotment of water works. And we just passed an APFO related to water and sewer that would be impacted by this in the following way: that the primary home, the primary dwelling, is the thing that has the allotment. So the allotment doesn't change. And I hear the concern that you brought up, Mr. Ford, is that there'll be twice as many people living there. I also know from firsthand knowledge, I can think of people that live very close to where I live, that people are setting up their houses with internally and doing this anyway. So the number of people that are doing this, it's happening. And I think this is code attempting to catch up to what's really happening with the way people's changing lives are. I know today, even though it is not necessarily, well, I guess it doesn't count as short-term rental, but people, you can go online and you can find people who are renting rooms in their houses. We've built very large houses for years, and people have very large houses, and they're making portions of it available. And what this would do as an attached ADU is you could modify your existing structure so it has multiple exterior entrances, but doesn't have an interior entrance or a locked interior entrance, what effectively allows two different family units or subsets of a family to live in a way that's less communal and more the way we're accustomed to. And I think that's really good. And again, just following with the water piece too, you know, with the infill building, we do worry about the pressure on our costs, because our water delivery and our sewer system, the cost of the individual homeowner is driven by the amount of infrastructure we have. When people are adding an ADU, they're not adding to the infrastructure. We're just delivering the same affluent, whether it be water or sewage, through the same existing infrastructure, which means cost per gallon goes down, right? And so in that way, now that would assume a lot of building of infill with this, right? But my basic premise that I'm trying to communicate here is that this I think does not have a negative effect on overall infrastructure cost at the municipal level, and in that way I think it's good, and it reduces some of those barriers. So I'm really glad about that. I think though that in my opinion what the state has done is good, but it probably represents some compromises, and it leaves room still for local planning commissions and local municipalities to still do adaptations that will take this further and more likely to be adopted, which is what the state gives us that authority to do, just that. And so I think this piece is a compliance piece. I do hope that the significant barrier of the HOAs, again, being kind of leveled across the board with the non-HOA communities and HOA communities, so that could potentially have more people doing it. But in 2018, La Plata passed an ADU ordinance. So that was the first time you could apply for a permit. And a few months ago, Mr. Dooley and I asked the question, you know, so we've had it, because I've been asked by residents, you know, why, because the county's been talking about doing this, and I think they just did it. And they were saying, well, when is the town going to catch up to what the county's done? It was like, hey, guess what? We had already done it. But then I was wondering, you know, where are we at with it? You know, how effective has it been? And unfortunately, as you said earlier, Mr. Dooley, not a single permit has ever been issued by the records you have, in the town of La Plata. And that tells me, you know, I think the barriers certainly with the HOAs have something to do with it. You know, doing some reading, I think some of the other barriers are, when I read about communities who have been successful in doing this, removing uncertainty. So one of the things that communities do is they develop a pre-approved baseline design that is then available so that a person in the community who has a home, single family home, wants to do this, whether it's a detached is typically where this scenario would play out. They can come and use a pre-existing plan and then pick from a set of pre-approved, surfaces or whatever, in compliance with the state law, obviously. But that would allow them to do that more quickly, because ADUs aren't typically built by a large developer. They're built by people like us, where we own just one house and we have a need in our family. We'd like an elderly or an aging family member to be able to live closer by, not have to buy another $400,000 house, and we can build something, far more affordably and have that family unit stay together as good. Young people who are going to community college or staying local in a trade rather than going to college and leaving the area, which is such a common thing for our kids in La Plata. So I do think, I would like to discuss the potential in the future of revisiting this and doing the things that are beyond compliance. And then the last thing I'll say about those two, but I do want to recognize as well, I like that you didn't just look at this clearly as a compliance thing, because you could have just used the state's tool and they tell you, here's exactly how you run your code through, and it tells you exactly what to add to make it compliant. And I really appreciated that your planning department, Mr. Dooley, went ahead and made some other features you added to this that I think will serve La Plata well. And so I'm happy to support this and looking forward to it. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. I have one follow-up question, more of a clarification. So would an existing attached garage converted qualify as an ADU? So Mr. Johnson, nod. You don't get a second vote on that one, Mr.
Yeah, I can answer. You said you wanted to convert an existing garage into an ADU.
I didn't say I wanted to.
Well,
I
just,
said,
you were hypothesizing, but yes, if you
would an existing garage attached?
yes, that would count as an ADU. That would definitely count as an ADU. That could either be, it could even be a detached garage, or it could be an internal garage. But as long as if you're converting it to be a full living space with kitchen, shower, and as well as a sleeping area, it would count as an ADU.
So,
Correct. But also, like you said, yeah, provided you have enough parking.
yes. So, in that instance, it would qualify as an ADU after ticking off all of the requirements. What if the HOA governance documents say garage cannot be used as a living space?
It fundamentally becomes a civil matter between the property owner and their HOA.
Could I ask a question? I mean, it seems clear, though, that the state law now would prohibit that.
Right.
So
That
it
restriction.
seems like that would be a very
Staff
short.
wouldn't go, yeah, staff wouldn't go out and do any sort of violation
saying.
notice. It ultimately is up to the property owner to enforce their rights under state law. And they would have to potentially have a court order that the HOA's provisions that prohibit that ADU from being created are now violate state law.
State and town ordinance.
Town ordinance.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Makes sense.
That's all I have. Are there any additional follow-up comments, thoughts, questions from Commissioner Ford?
Is an ADU defined as permanent structure or temporary, like sheds or foundation?
We can go up to the first slide. We actually have on the first slide is the town's definition.
Okay, thank
And
you.
I want to show that to you, just so that we're reading it together. So you have better eyes than I do. Maybe you should read that.
Yeah, so it says an ADU is a self-contained apartment located in, and this is directly from the definition from the town ordinance. It's an ADU is a self-contained apartment located in or attached to a principal owner occupied single-family dwelling or located in a separate structure on the same lot as a principal owner occupied single-family dwelling.
So fundamentally, to answer your question, you could potentially create an ADU, either by creating a new structure or adding on to the existing primary structure. And later on decide that you want to abandon the use of the ADU, you would have to, there'd be very little change, if any, that would be required to the actual structure, because the ADU requirements are now aligned with our accessory dwelling unit ordinance provisions for setbacks, for primarily for setbacks, distance between structures.
Yeah, I just know we have approvals for sheds by the town, so I wanted to find out if that was if somebody has a shed, they convert it, it's their ADU.
Yeah, they fundamentally could. It's because, again, accessory structures have 5-foot setback from side and rear. It has to be built in the rear yard of the property that's defined in our code. So anything could potentially be converted to an ADU or reconverted back to an accessory structure.
Thank you, that's all.
Just one follow-up to that, just to be clear, but a shed would still have to be, if it was going to be converted to an ADU, would have to be converted in compliance with all
Yeah,
building codes,
yeah,
modern building
Yeah,
codes, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
They'd have to
yeah,
comply with these ordinance provisions. That's
Right.
correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any additional thoughts, comments, questions? Thank you, Director Dooley. Mr. Johnson, thank you. Let me turn to you, Madam Clerk. Have you received any additional written statements to be included in the record?
No, Madam Chair, no additional written statements have been received.
Thank you. Director Dooley, Mr. Johnson, any final thoughts, comments, questions, additions you'd like for us to be aware of?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Hearing no additional questions or comments, this concludes the public hearing on ZTA 04-2026 accessory dwelling units. And the Planning Commission will hear no further comments or questions regarding this issue. The question for us is, do we close the record or do we keep the record open? Commissioner Ford, what say you?
Close. Close the record.
Commissioner Will,
Close the record.
Vice Chair Hudnall,
Close the record.
Councilman Gutenberg.
Close the record.
I also agree to close the record. So there is consensus to close the record, and we will move toward a motion with regard to the recommendation from the planning staff.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we, as a planning commission, recommend that the zoning text amendment as written is forwarded to the council for consideration, noting the minor edits that you brought up at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Commissioner Ford, what say you? Yay or nay?
Yeah.
Commissioner Will?
Yay.
Vice Chair Hudnall?
Yeah.
Chairman Gutenberg? Councilman Gutenberg?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So the motion passes and it's approved with the minor tweaks. Moving on, we'll go to the approval of minutes from the July 7th meeting. Councilman Gutenberg and myself were absent, so we will not participate in this part. But I would ask, has the other commissioners had an opportunity to review those minutes? And if so, is there a motion to approve the minutes as they're submitted, or are there any amendments?
I'll submit a motion to approve the minutes from the meeting on July 7th.
Is there a second?
A second.
All those that were present in favor, please say aye.
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 The motion carries, and the meeting notes of July 7th are approved. Let me turn to you, Director Dooley, for any matters of discussion that or heads up that you want to make us aware of.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to report out that the town council on April 28th held its second reading on the APFO for roads, and it was approved. And that ordinance will now go into effect on August 12th. So we'll have now fully codified APFO provisions for roads, as including the prior approvals for water, sewer, and school seating capacity. As a corollary to the roads APFO, staff is currently working with a traffic engineer consultant to develop our traffic impact study manual for implementing the ordinance, and to provide information for developers or property owners that are required to have a traffic study, so that they understand the processes and procedures. And so there's clarity and uniformity in terms of how that happens across the board for future traffic studies for projects. And I'm looking at having that completed by September. So it should be a very easy and nice transition to what we've approved. And then the second report out is that to let the commission know that staff and our subcommittee members, Commissioner Banks Commissioner Ford and Whale and I had a meeting on last Thursday, July 30th, to discuss the water conservation ordinance. We had a good meeting. I think we've made some progress on that. We're going to have a follow-up meeting on next week, August 13th, to carry on where we left off, because we ran out of time. And with a little luck, hopefully we'll bring this back before the commission in September. If not, then it'll certainly be the first meeting in October, but I'm shooting to bring it back to you for September. And that's basically it. I'm going to defer some comments for the commission's reference to Council Liaison Gutenberg to discuss the bylaws for the PC that were adopted by the town council at the last meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. Just one question. You said the next subcommittee meeting is going to be August 30th?
August 13th.
13th. Okay.
Yes.
I had a 3
It's
right.
next Thursday.
Thank you. Any questions about anything Director Dooley said? Thank you. Next is the public comment. This is the time on the agenda where we ask if there are any public comments from anyone, either online or in the room.
No public comment signed up, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Director Dooley, I think you covered everything in terms of the staff report and matters, so there's no additional.
I was looking for
Okay,
making comments about the bylaws that were adopted by the council to allow Council Liaison Gutenberg to address the commission.
all right, thank you. I'm just ticking off the agenda here, making sure that I thought you had covered everything. I am going to turn to Councilman Gutenberg next for report out.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So, so I think all I'll talk about tonight is the bylaws that were circulated. I think you've all seen those now or had a chance in email to see them. Just wanted to talk a little about the intent of them, really. the need varied by commission and board, I would say. And so the need for bylaws, I think with a commission like the Planning Commission was lower than probably others, but I think it still has utility here. And the utility of it for us, I think, is, our rule of procedures is still there, and it is very specific. And it is some of it is directed by law, others by practice here, and that is still important and the cornerstone of how we operate. I think the utility for just unique to this commission of the bylaws is I can imagine just that is like a really good way to be introduced to how we operate, because it doesn't introduce anything that changes our rule of procedure. It is, in my view, a simple, a plain English wording of effectively most of what's in our rule of procedure. Not 100% coverage, but it effectively is that. And I could see a new member of the community coming in and being able to our rules of procedure, I think, on the Planning Commission can be a little intimidating if it's the first time you've been on a board. I know it was for me when I looked at it, and this is a way to sort of first get your toes in the water. There are some boards and commissions that didn't have any rules of procedure kind of in place, and this is a way for us to get that first baseline layer just as a common practice across all of them, kind of level the board. So that's really what drove that. And if you're interested in more of it, the town manager had a really good staff report on this that kind of encapsulates all the reasons why we did this, what the intent was behind it. And I think also I spoke about it at our council meeting the other night when we adopted these. This pairs nicely with the the rule of procedures, now the bylaws. We also have a code of civility we didn't have a year ago. We also have training for all of our boards and commissions that we didn't have a year ago. And so this was a thing that I think the council and town staff all agreed and prioritized and really, I think this is just part of us reminding ourselves the democratic process, the way we interact is so important. It's a thing that personally I think makes us more effective when we communicate in a way that allows space for everybody and allows us also to efficiently move through. I know sometimes these meetings feel very long and that we kind of drag them out through the procedures, but really the procedures are facilitating a lot of different views being able to be expressed and making space for them so that we can make a decision as a group. And so in that way, this is just an important piece of that. And I'm glad we're doing it across the board. And it's just another tool that we have to use as we progress and get things done for the community. And that's all I have tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And I agree with everything you said. Any final thoughts, comments? Hearing none, we will adjourn. It is 6:47 p.m. Thank you all. Have a great evening.